Now that you have sequenced and clustered the principles of a course, the next step is to write one learning outcome statement for each cluster. This should yield 3 to 5 outcome statements for your course. It is best to have only one learning outcome statement for each cluster. This is the first step in transforming your clusters into learning modules with a learning outcome statement describing the purpose and scope of that module in clear and concise terms. If you find it difficult to determine a single learning outcome for each cluster, then perhaps your cluster needs to be split into 2 or more clusters. Conversely, if you find that you have 2 or more clusters that are so similar that the learning outcome statements are essentially the same, then consider combining the clusters. The first step is that we need to review each cluster in your course and determine what the learners will be able to do to demonstrate that they understand and are able to employ all the principles within that cluster. A good guiding question for you to consider is, what do you want the learners to be able to do to demonstrate that they understand and are able to employ all the principles in this cluster even 1 or 2 years after the course is over? Can you see how answering this question will help you design a course that will successfully meet its purpose? Strong learning outcome statements clearly describe what actions the learners will be able to do under what conditions and the criteria for judging its success. Actions are best described in terms that are observable and measurable. This makes it easier to assess how well the learning outcome was achieved. Although it is important to describe the conditions under which the actions are to be performed, often this is left out and implied because it is obvious. Some examples of where you may want to make sure it is described well is when the conditions are about the environment. Are learners to be able to perform the action in the dark versus daylight, outside versus indoors? May they do it with the help from others? And what resources can be used? You should also include describing some important criteria for how the success performance will be determined, unless it is also so obvious that everyone will know. Some examples of criteria that you may need to state are the time interval. How long does it take them to complete the action? And the quality of any artifact that is produced. Clear learning outcome statements have the following benefits. Makes it easier to determine the success of the course because these outcomes are measurable. These also can be used to promote the course and recruit participants. They can help stakeholders understand what the results will be. And more importantly, they guide the design and development of the assessments and modules within the course. As each cluster will become a module in your course, this learning outcome statement will become the module-level learning outcome statement for your course. Can you describe the learning outcome of this module? In summary, the 3 principles that you should remember and be able to employ from this presentation are: 1. Strong learning outcome statements describe what the learners will be able to do to demonstrate that they have learned to understand and employ one or more principles successfully. 2. Describing the intended learning outcome of a module in a clear statement is the best way to communicate the purpose and the promise of a module of learning. And 3. Strong learning outcome statements describe 3 things: the action the learner will be able to perform after the learning has taken place, the conditions under which the action is to be performed, and the criteria for judging the success of the performance.